7. Gateway. The late photographer Jim Marshall is regarded as one of the most celebrated photographers of the 20th century. He holds the distinction of being the first and only photographer to be presented with the Grammy Trustees Award. He started as a professional photographer in 1959. He was given unrivaled access to rock's biggest artists, including the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, and Ray Charles. He was the only photographer granted backstage access for the Beatles' final full concert, and also shot the Rolling Stones on their historic 1972 tour. He formed special bonds with the artists he worked with, and those relationships helped him capture some of his most vivid and iconic imagery. Over a 50-year career, the photographs he took appeared on more than 500 album covers. He was passionate about his work up until the end. "I have no kids," he used to say. "My photographs are my children." Exercises 1. In Texas, size matters, and the Astrodome does not disappoint. This multi-purpose domed sports stadium stands 18 stories high. Its dome is 710 feet in diameter, and the ceiling is 208 feet above the playing surface, which itself sits 25 feet below street level. The Astrodome was completed in November 1964, 6 months ahead of schedule, even though many significant engineering changes were required during its construction period. Originally, transparent plastic panels covered the roof of the stadium, but the bright sunlight coming through them made it difficult for baseball players to see and catch fly balls. To remedy the glare, officials painted the roof panels after the stadium opened. Bermuda grass originally covered the playing surface, but the painted ceiling panels blocked the sunlight and the grass died, prompting the development and installation of an artificial surface now known as AstroTurf. Exercises 2. Charlotte Baker was born in Springfield, Massachusetts on April 11, 1833. She was the daughter of Dr. Matthew Bridge and Catherine Catlin Baker. The family on her mother's side descended from Roland Stebbins, one of the founders of Springfield. Because Baker was believed to be a delicate child, she did not attend school regularly until about age 11, when she entered Mrs. Stone's school in Greenfield, Massachusetts, and later Deerfield Academy, where she and another young woman were the only females. She eventually became an assistant teacher, and in 1856 opened a school in Chicago with lifelong friend Susan Minott Lane. The school was discontinued in 1864 when Baker returned to Cambridge to help her mother. She began writing book reviews and newspaper and magazine articles on botany, art, and women's work. She also wrote a series for children, Pictures from French and English History. Exercises 6. Jan van Eyck was born before 1390, but very little is known about his early life before 1422. Jan van Eyck was one of the greatest European painters of his time. He spent most of his career in Bruges in Belgium, where he worked for Philip the Good, Duke of Burgundy. Philip employed him on secret diplomatic missions, as well as for his artistic skills. For centuries, Van Eyck was regarded as the inventor of oil painting. We know that it was in fact used before his time, but he was certainly one of the first to master the technique. His craftsmanship was superb, and he created effects of glowing color and extremely delicate detail that are still amazing to see. Because he showed the potential of oil paint so brilliantly, Van Eyck is considered to be one of the most important figures in European art. Exercises 7. Witchetty grubs are wood-eating larvae, most commonly of the cossid moth. They feed on the roots of river-red gum trees, black wattle trees, and acacia bushes, 2 feet underground, and have to be dug up. They are a staple food in traditional Aborigine diets and the most important insect food of the desert. They are rich in energy, protein, and fat, as well as being a good source of vitamin B1, vitamin C, and essential minerals such as magnesium, zinc, iron, and calcium. Women and children searched for grubs, which were located by finding a pile of sawdust around the trees. A long hooked wire was used to catch the grubs. The grubs were eaten raw or roasted in hot ashes to crisp the skin, the flesh turning from white to golden, like roast chicken skin. The raw grub tastes nutty, while the cooked version tastes like fried egg. A paste made from witchetty grubs was used to treat wounds and burns and to soothe the sore gums of teething children. 8. Gateway. Psychologists who study giving behavior have noticed that some people give substantial amounts to 1 or 2 charities, while others give small amounts to many charities. Those who donate to 1 or 2 charities seek evidence about what the charity is doing and that it is really having a positive impact. If the evidence indicates that the charity is really helping others, they make a substantial donation. Those who give small amounts to many charities are not so interested in whether what they are doing helps others. Psychologists call them warm glow givers. Knowing that they are giving makes them feel good, regardless of the impact of their donation. In many cases, the donation is so small, $10 or less, that if they stop to think, they would realize that the cost of processing the donation is likely to exceed any benefit it brings to the charity. Exercises 1. The economic and technical forces that first led to language standardization and mass literacy have continued to gain momentum. Now that economic relationships are instantaneous and global, national vocabularies have grown still larger in scope. One of the domains of our national vocabulary is international. Basic literacy in the contemporary world requires knowledge of certain terms known by literate people everywhere in the world, no matter what language they speak. This core lexicon of modern education includes basic words from world history, world cultures, geography, and the physical and biological sciences. Taught in all national educational systems, and not confined to any particular national language, it is the most broadly shared literate vocabulary in the world. Exercises 2. Diet has been known for many years to play a key role as a risk factor for chronic diseases. What is apparent at the global level is that great changes have swept the entire world since the second half of the 20th century, inducing major modifications in diet, first in industrial regions and more recently in developing countries. Traditional, largely plant-based diets have been swiftly replaced by high-fat, energy-dense diets with a substantial content of animal-based foods. But diet, while critical to prevention, is just one risk factor. Physical inactivity, now recognized as an increasingly important determining factor of health, is the result of a progressive shift of lifestyle towards more sedentary patterns in developing countries as much as in industrialized ones. Exercises 3. Better understanding of customer needs can lead to increased sales and a larger market share. Chris Kraft's vice president and general manager, Bob McNeil, is a believer. He has had first-hand experience watching his company improve its products by listening to customer complaints. But sometimes, McNeil says, you have to help customers along because they do not always voice their complaints directly to the company. Some boat owners report that they do not express dissatisfaction because they are not sure what to ask for, or they fear being perceived as a nuisance by the boat dealer. Other boat owners lack confidence in the dealer's knowledge about the boats they sell, or think that everyone has these problems. So Bob McNeil encourages his dealers to go out and interact with boat owners when they are on their boats to actively ask for complaints. Exercises 4. Indeed, in order to feel good about the choices we make, self-justification is necessary. Yet mindless self-justification, or justifying things that we know were mistakes for the sake of sticking to our story, can draw us deeper into disaster. It blocks our ability to even see our errors, let alone correct them. It distorts reality, keeping us from getting all the information we need and assessing issues clearly. It deepens and widens rifts between lovers, friends, and nations. It keeps us from letting go of unhealthy habits. It permits the guilty to avoid taking responsibility for their deeds, as when an employee is caught embezzling and he justifies it by saying he is very badly underpaid. It's only through constant self-policing that we can make sure our self-justification is mindful and not a denial of reality. Exercises 5. Here's an interesting thought. If glaciers started reforming, they have a great deal more water now to draw on. Hudson Bay, the Great Lakes, the hundreds of thousands of lakes of Canada, none of which existed to fuel the last ice sheet, so they would grow very much quicker. And if they did start to advance again, what exactly would we do? Blast them with TNT or maybe nuclear missiles? Well, doubtless we would, but consider this. In 1964, the largest earthquake ever recorded in North America rocked Alaska with 200,000 megatons of concentrated might, the equivalent of 2,000 nuclear bombs. Almost 3,000 miles away in Texas, water sloshed out of swimming pools. A street in Anchorage fell 20 feet. The quake devastated 24,000 square miles of wilderness, much of it glaciated. And what effect did all this might have on Alaska's glaciers? None. Exercises 6. The perspectives that researchers, consultants, coaches, and athletes have about confidence share common elements related to athletes' fundamental faith in their readiness to perform their best. Drawing on these diverse viewpoints, we define confidence as athletes' belief in their ability to achieve their goals and fully realize their ability. Athletes who have confidence are able to be positive, motivated, intense, focused, and emotionally in control when they need to be. Athletes with this belief are able to stay confident even when they're not performing well. Confident athletes are not negative and uncertain in difficult competitions, and they're not overconfident in easy competitions. Confidence also encourages athletes to seek out pressure situations and to view difficult conditions and tough opponents as challenges to pursue. Exercises 7. The fact that chimps do have basic ability when it comes to the use of arbitrary symbols is enough to suggest the gradually building complexity in symbol use among primates. And on that point, I'd like to put in a plug for my dog, Shep, who understands at least functionally a number of my words. When, for instance, I say, "We're going to check the mail," He knows, well, that means we're going to head out to the road and check the postal box. And though he hasn't mastered English yet, he does seem to use certain arbitrary noises innovatively as symbols. For example, he barks in various ways when he's outside, but he uses one peculiar, brief, and muffled bark only at certain times, conveying something in the direction of, "I want to come in now." Since the sound is distinctive, since it's about coming in the house, and since no other dog I've had has ever used this rather arbitrary sound, the instance leans toward real language. Exercises 8. Evolutionary theorists believe that fear is an adaptive mechanism that allows us to sense danger and respond appropriately. Indeed, if ancient people had walked up to the saber-toothed tiger to pet the nice kitty instead of heeding their fear and fleeing, we would not be here now. People who were appropriately scared lived to reproduce and became our ancestors, and that fear response is with us still. In studies, researchers have found that children and adults alike are quicker at identifying snakes and spiders in photos than they are at identifying benign items such as flowers. This supports the idea that humans have developed the ability to home in on targets that carry a perceived threat, especially when that target is associated with this physiological signs and feelings of fear. Fear was key to our ancestors' survival, and although those same dangers are not ones we face in daily life, the mechanism of fear still works the same as it always has.